So I've really been enjoying my hikes and filming videos out there lately. But this past week, I wanted to just go on a hike alone. And I didn't want to have some sort of end goal for doing it. And I felt like I just needed the time for myself. So of course, that led to the topic of this video, which is that we're always seeking some sort of resolution. And at the same time, what we desire is what we fear. So the ultimate resolution to us is death. And yet, within life and within the trajectory that we believe that we're on, we seek like all sorts of resolutions. We seek them in relationships. We seek them in various ways of securing the idea of us as somebody who's good, somebody who's loved, somebody who's smart enough, brilliant enough, doing well enough. And we seek it in various ways, and we don't actually like some of us are pretty focused on like the one way we want to do it, but we're pretty greedy. And all greed is really is saying that what I have right now is not enough. And so we seek a resolution, and this can be in understanding, it can be like insights, it can be spiritual attainment, it can be anything that we believe is not here or accessible or access itself right here and now. And so the etymology of the word resolution is sort of all over the place. And I hope that this doesn't bore the heck out of you as it would me a few years ago. But I just see so many like crazy insights and like the completely disconnected various meanings of the word, as well as the sort of like kind of holistic understanding. Like that's sort of like what I get when I read etymology. So this is from the online etymology dictionary. Resolution, late 14th century, a breaking into parts. From Old French resolution, or directly from Latin resolutionem. Process of reducing things into simpler forms. From past participle stem of resolver, loosen, see resolve. Okay, so resolution, dissolution, disappearing or breaking into parts, creating dualities. So like both those, like the solution is the problem. Okay. So a sense of a solving as of mathematical problems, first recorded 1540s, as is that of power of holding firmly, compare resolute. Sense of decision or expression of a meeting is from circa 1600. Meaning, effect of an optical instrument is from 1860. So resolution, how well you can see something, what the resolution of something is. New Year's resolution, in reference to a specific intention to better oneself, is from at least the 1780s. And through 19th century, they generally were of a pious nature. So there's a lot there. And this is basically what we're seeking. It's what we're seeking in relationships. It's what we're seeking to avoid when we try to be kind to people all of the time. That maybe we'll say like a harsh word to someone and they'll die in a car crash and we'll feel horrible because there's no resolution to it. It's what we're seeking from understanding. And I thought about this too, like on that same hike when I was like, oh, I'm looking for a resolution. I came out off, like there's this little island where I film, and then there's this beach. And it's like a double beach. It's not really like a sandbar, but there's a beach on either side and there's like no land in between. And so this connects the island. So basically you have one beach facing the opposite direction. And when I came out, the moon, which was almost full, was centered in the view of one beach, and the sun, which was right about to set, was centered in the other one. And I was like, oh, a full moon, duh, is when there's alignment of these things. And of course, like later, I was like, oh yeah, it's because the earth is aligned, so the moon is already full, and it's just the perspective of the earth, like where it is, that creates alignment. And so then I realized that a lot, like the idea of alignment is complete BS. And it's like a solution. It's like this magical thing that sort of like comes together all at once. And yet it's a cycle that keeps revolving around. Resolution, revolution. And later I contemplated this and I realized that if you had like a very large orbit, from your perspective as a small thing that was going around in a circle, you would think that you would think that you were going in a completely straight line. And you would not feel that you were going around in circles. And so this is sort of like our limited perspective and what it seems to us. And it was so funny to have, like, on the start of the hike, this sort of insight, oh, I'm looking for a resolution to things, and then have this moment. And at the same time, I'm like standing here just like in awe of this like perfection of like how things are situated and how things are aligned right there, almost, because the moon wasn't completely full. And I noticed that the crows, like every single crow in the area, had gathered together in a single tree, and they were like cawing, and they had this like big meeting, and then they all just like went off to their own places. And it was just this amazing kind of thing. And I was like, oh, I want to tell people about this in a video. And so this kind of like when you think about this sort of like moment, there's no such thing as climaxes or peak experiences. I guess because when you're having an experience, you've already left, you're already something that went out to go do something. And so if you've split yourself off from the greater whole, then of course you're going to feel insecure and insignificant and like you need some sort of resolution. But if you're the creator, then you're not the character. And so you're not the one who's the one that needs the resolution. You're the creator of the resolution itself. And there's no need to resolve that for the character or not. So all we really mean when we say that you're the creator is that you can choose to have the thought or not. That's not quite right either. You are aware of the thought. So you're not actually the thing that moves. You're not actually the thing that goes around in the circle, the thing that can be aligned or not aligned. And it's the thought that creates the illusion that there's movement. And it might help to expand your definition of what a thought is. So really, there is no thought at all. And thought is everything that you're sensing right now. And thought is not experienced, an exclusion of anything that you're sensing. So you could say that all translation of perception is thought. So there's no boundary between what is a thought and what is not, what's pure perception and what's not. And there's no boundary between language and what we can actually communicate and what is not. And so that there, by the way, is sort of your open window to sensing like vibrations, getting like communications from other people that you wouldn't necessarily otherwise think were possible. So you're already completely open. So it's when we meditate, or when we go to the sense of awareness, or we go to the sense I am, that we realize that the thought is this seeming feeling of movement. So you can switch your perspective from I am moving in the world to as if that this were a 360 degree like Omni theater screen that was moving and you're always standing still. So movement is thought. So when you have a thought and you're aware of the thought, you realize that you're not actually it and you don't have to move with it. And so this thought that says it needs a resolution, it's moving, it needs a resolution, you see that you are already aware of the thought and that it doesn't have any movement and it doesn't need any resolution, no matter like where it starts. It didn't actually start at all. So this is the whole magic of this, which is like in your direct experience, going into the sense I am. And there's a real like sort of sense of wonder that comes about with this when we really start to perceive things. So when you really, really listen to something, or you really, really see or perceive something, you see that there's so many amazing details and surprises of it, and you understand that it's only made of light. So I didn't realize how much like foundational groundwork was laid for me freshman year, my first art class, when my art teacher taught us how to draw still lifes and really look at something and to see the light source and how that completely changed the appearance of everything. So like intellectually you can do this, but yours like as that perception is happening, and there's no thing being perceived at all. So that is the thought itself, and that is the illusion of movement itself. And as you go closer and closer to this and you start to understand things and you start to like see these things, it's amazing. And there's so many insights that come through, and you can apply it to different areas of your life and have incredible success, and just it feels amazing. And it's almost as if the universe is so good that even if we come the tiniest bit closer to it, we start to see this, and we can get caught up in that too. And that's why it's not about like denying the good, but realizing that every time you have a thought that comes up that feels bad, that there is good in that too. So it seems as if every thought has like a negative space, again, like from level 1 art class. So as you're drawing something, you consider the negative space. So if you actually like want to create the likeness of this image on paper, you have to consider not just the object itself, but the space around it in order to make a good representation of it. So every single thought you have is in its actuality, is in its creation completely whole. And so you can examine a thought, you can contemplate a thought, and you can see the flip side of a thought. So whenever we have a thought that rises out of insecurity, there are some really like hilarious things that if you can flip your perspective from the insecure thing that the thought is about, and flip your perspective to one who's just like seeing this unfold and who gets the joke, You see that even like some of the harshest, worst feeling thoughts are actually like pretty hilariously pointing you to what you want. So an example of this is last night I looked down at my hip, and this is the time of year where all like the winter weight gain has accumulated, and I gain a few pounds like every winter. And this time of year I always get kind of sensitive to it. So I looked down at my hip and I'm like, wow, I'm really losing my shape. And that thought felt awful. And I was like, oh, I'm going to look at that from a different perspective. And I'm like, because I was really contemplating like the body identity and formlessness and losing your and I made that connection, and it was absolutely hysterical. But you don't have to go there at all. You don't have to make that movement at all. And it feels amazing to go full circle with the thought and realize that it wasn't really taking you someplace that you were scared to go at all. You don't have to go there at all if you don't want to. And that's meditation. It's realizing that creative power, awareness, whatever you want to call it. Okay. So to drive the point of that you are movement and you're the thing that's apparently staying still while there's movement and that duality going on at the same time, let me show you this. So my kids got this in a gift bag from the local church because they couldn't have their party this year because of the pandemic. But it's a lenticular printed magic card. So it creates a little movie. So here's Jesus's tomb, and depending on the movement of it and depending on your perspective, it's either the night and the tomb is sealed or the morning and Jesus has risen. So all movement depends on, like a movie is frames changing. So of course, reality has no frames, but thought acts as if it's a frame. It knows what something is. It's an object. It's a thing. I know what it is. So it's a snapshot in time. And the snapshot is in a representation of the image. So you know how people can take good photos of you and bad photos of you, and you wouldn't want one photo to be a representation of how you actually look, but it's sort of like this aid for the imagination. So people sort of like think that they know what you look like. So the same thing, thought is this sort of it's a movement, and it's a like still snapshot at the same time, which creates the story and creates this movie, and it's not happening at all.